Thousands of illegals are swamping our southern border. At times, 200, 300 rush the Border Patrol just to seek refuge in America, and thousands more are being bussed in. The situation is beginning to deteriorate. House Homeland Security Committee Chairman Michael McCall says it's really, really bad down there. Listen.
The point is our military bases are turning into refugee camps. I never thought I would see this in the United States of America. The Department of Homeland Security is currently not adequately prepared to deal with this influx of unaccompanied children. This has left state and local officials to fill the void, and it takes the Border Patrol away from their main mission, and that is securing the border.
Well, don't take one congressman's word for it. Here's hundreds of American citizens fired up at a town hall meeting in Murrieta, California, where a tsunami of illegals is swamping their small town.
You have a handle, a real handle, on what this is costing us out of our pockets. And please, use the word illegal aliens. They came across here illegally.
If I break the law, you're going to come down on me real quick. And yet, you are not following the law. You are breaking the law.
You'll receive our gratitude in the form of not being removed from offices. When you prove your ability to stay on this front line until this singularly important issue is completely, comprehensively resolved.
All right, Greg, take it first, man. These people are fired up.
Well, they should be. This is the result of years of frustration. This is when common sense, when it's ignored, becomes wrath. It makes you think, we should declare Visit a Liberal Day, where you walk into their house, you open the fridge. How would Nancy Pelosi feel if a group of Texans barged into her house? She would shoot them with her Botox gun. And what if Americans did this to Mexico? What would happen? We know what happened to one jailed Marine, Andrew Tomaresi. He's still there. So when they come here, when undocumented aliens come here, they get a welcome wagon. Over there, we get a jail cell.
What do you think, Dana? I mean, it seems to be a groundswell. People are getting more and more angry.
So Americans are fairly patient and understand that their government has a lot on its plate, and they're willing to take a lot and to forgive a lot of things. But this has been building up for so many years, and I am not exactly sure what the solution is. But you can't. All the other things that people at this table or people around the country might want to do on immigration are not going to be possible until the security situation is resolved. And I don't know exactly what the exact definition is going to be. Like, what does border enforcement and control, what would they accept? What should we accept? And I think that the humanitarian crisis that's building on top of that is escalating this to a point that you'll see more of these types of town hall meetings, and it won't just be in California, it'll be across America. Well, in the border states.
Bob, President Obama keeps saying it's these kids, it's just these kids that are seeking refuge, whatnot. These kids are now carrying a lot of disease and a lot of crimes coming into the country, and that's going to be a big issue.
Well, first of all, it's not a liberal or a conservative issue. This is something that's been going on for a long time. The reason you're seeing this influx now is because in both Nicaragua and El Salvador, they're having major gang problems. Kids are getting killed, and mothers and fathers are sending their kids out to the United States because they want to get them away from harm's way. And so it is a unusually large group coming over, and they are kids. I think the very small percentage of them are criminals. And the fact is they're not coming in here and being welcomed. They're being sent into detention until they figure out what to do with them. So I think this is something that's not a liberal issue or a conservative issue. It's something that we need to deal with.
Would you agree with that?
I don't. I think it's easy to say it's not a liberal or a conservative issue when you say, who does this affect? Because if you look at that audience at that town hall, almost every single demographic is represented. So you had an African-American man who looks younger. You had a senior citizen female who stood up and took the microphone who's older. It's affecting everyone in this communities, regardless of what political affiliation. But it is a Republican and Democrat issue. And the reason for that is, Eric, this administration, a Democratic administration, told us that the border was secure. Jay Carney stood at the podium and he said the border is sealed. There's no reason that we need to spend a lot of time on this in a comprehensive immigration bill. You look at Capitol Hill. You look at this town. The mayor came out and he said, I'm getting flack because I'm being painted as someone who doesn't want immigration. People in the town are being painted as xenophobic, we're bigots, we don't want them here. He goes, that's not the case. That's why it's a Republican and Democrat issue, because Democrats have allowed this to happen, the administration has allowed it to happen, and Republicans who just want to seal the border are painted as complete isolationist bigots.
Who gets hurt the worst when 90,000 illegal youngsters come in and maybe 3 million of their parents?
I think it's lower income people. I mean, they're the ones that won't get those jobs. I mean, you could argue a lot of people weren't willing to take those jobs, but it's the idea, I guess, that a violation of security somehow negates the concept of security. It's like, well, we got to let these guys in, so we can't even talk about it. No, that's the whole point. You got to this reinforces the idea of security.
Well, we don't let them in. We try to keep them out.
I mean, when somebody breaks into your house, you don't just say, "Oh, no, you buy a better lock."
No, you're right. But the other thing about this is the reason you can't lay this on the Democrats. There were 11 million undocumented workers in this country before Barack Obama ever took office. Now that means they came in under somebody else's watch. So you can't lay this on him.
We're talking about the new ones, Bob.
Yes, and I just told you what I thought it was. It was unrest in 2 countries.
The liberal agenda, the liberal ideologies, you're for the little guy, right? You want to make sure the little guy's taken care of too, right? The underprivileged, the people who can't work, the people who don't make enough money, people who need health care. Yes or no?
Well, I just want to know if I'm going to answer yes or no.
Asking you that is because we point out these kids, if they're allowed to stay, these illegals, if they're allowed to stay, they're not going to be the one. They're going to be ones working at Starbucks and at Dunkin' Donuts and Jack in the Box. They're not going to be the ones
these kids are going to be allowed off these bases and go out to work. Is that what you think? You really believe that?
My question is, doesn't illegal immigration, turning a blind eye, hurt the little guy?
If these people were allowed to stay in here, and they're not going to be allowed.
That's assuming. So you're basically saying that there's no immigrants right now working in those jobs?
Of course there are.
Okay.
They're working in a lot of jobs that, frankly, Americans don't want to do.
Eric's question is, doesn't that, and I would agree with that, but doesn't it hurt, I mean, Greg mentioned this too, the lower income, they're taking away the services from the lower incomes, and it's that 1% that you hate on the left so much that's paying for these services.
These kids, the average age of these kids are 9 years old. Where are they going to go to work at McDonald's? It'll be a pretty lousy hamburger.
So even worse, they'll be sex trafficked, and then there'll be our problem. We have to worry about their health, their vaccinations.
What is your answer to it? What is your answer to it?
Where are they going to go to school in the fall?
What is your answer to it?
Where?
What would you
I'm going to do a Beckel. Where are they going to go to school in the fall? Since the president has said that they're allowed to stay
here
to go to
under
executive order.
No, he did not say they were allowed to stay here. That's wrong. Not these group. He
not this specific group.
No, he did give 800,000 who had been either in the service or in school the right to stay here.
That's why they're coming here.
No, that's not why they're coming here. It's because you've got almost civil war in Salvador and Nicaragua.
Well, Bob, there are a lot of bad places around the world. So we take all the children from all the places where stuff is going on.
I'm not suggesting you take these kids, but what are you going to do? I want to know what your answers are. You
send them back. Send them back. Just a couple hours ago, Texas Governor Rick Perry testified to a congressional panel on the crisis at the border. Obama is set to visit Texas next week, but will only be there for a fundraiser. Governor Perry finds that shocking.
One of the reasons I asked him to come here, I want him to see this. Because just like you, Congressman, I think if he walked in that Sally Port and he saw what all of you've seen, then he would realize that, this is bigger than politics, this is bigger than, but it's not bigger than America.
It's not bigger than the book.
Well, let's get Danny.
Okay, I think a couple of things. I think that President Obama, they are going to have an official event there in addition to the fundraisers. You don't know what came first, the chicken or the egg, in that case. And I think that the White House is playing this wrong. I think I would have accepted, if I were just putting myself in President Obama's shoes, I think I would have accepted the invitation. And I would have taken that Rick Perry, who seems very genuine and sincere, and gone to the border with him and said, you know what, Governor, then I'm going to count on you. Let's fix this together. And because if they're serious about solving the problem, they're going to have people like Governor Perry to help them. So if I were President Obama, I would go, or even if they don't want to accept it right now, they should sleep on it, think about it over the weekend, and next week I would go with him.
We're by the way, Rick Perry shooting his mouth off up here. First of all, he didn't invite Obama. His decision was made before. He wouldn't accept an invitation from this dude.
Why? He's a governor.
But I mean,
I would take.
Governors are more qualified, especially in that state.
Border state.
This guy, I just don't believe this guy's qualified. But here's my question: why don't they send the Texas Rangers and the Texas State Police down there?
Why don't you send the National Guard?
But you know who's doing that right now? Saudi Arabia is doing that on their border because of Iraq. If you want to, you don't need a time machine to see where stuff like this is headed when you suddenly sacrifice borders for feelings. Obama's response so far has always been, we're a nation of immigrants, which may be the most intellectually vapid comment you can make because it justifies almost any arrival. It justifies any arrival. Hell, the 9/11 hijackers could have been immigrating.
Why do we allow Cubans to come in here if they get to the United States? Why do we allow them to become legal?
Who?
Cubans.
Cubans?
Yeah.
Well, maybe because maybe there's an orderly process that they undertook. Maybe they filled out the paperwork. Maybe they got a lawyer.
No,
maybe they did what a lot of people I know
There was
did.
a law that was passed that said if Cubans could put their foot on dry land, they're allowed to stay here because of Castro.
Well, why did the left hate on Elian Gonzalez? Why did the left make Elian Gonzalez go back?
That is a great point. What if all these kids were all Elian Gonzalez?
He was a child.
Then what? Then what would
now
we
he's a
do?
communist.
Would we send him right back?
Well, you know, I'm surprised about Texas. Texas was just fine. When George Bush was governor down there, they didn't have a problem.
Well, no, I don't think that's exactly the case. I think that the president, as governor, was very supportive of a temporary worker program, which worked very well. And he thought, and a lot of people disagreed with him, but he thought that a national program like that would make sense so that if families wanted to come here and work and send money back so their kids could go to school, that's another thing. I heard an interesting statistic today, though. In Honduras, which is the murder capital of the world, they graduate about 37% of their young people from high school. So you have, do the math for me, 67% of people grow up and they're in the murder capital of the world. They have no hope. They have no jobs. And so what I don't understand is there's the short-term problem of fixing the border now. But how do you explain to the families in Murrieta, California, that there's 52,000 kids here now? How do you stop that? How do we know there's not going to be 52,000 next year?
What do you say to a Honduran father and mother about their kids being shot and they won't get them out of harm's way?
That's what I'm saying.
What about their grandparents? They should come too.
So every country who has political turmoil, it's not even political. It is
an example of the United States.
The genesis of what this is.
But it is an example of the United States always ignoring Latin America and not focusing enough attention. Do you remember when President Obama said we're going to turn away from the Middle East and we're going to pivot to Asia?
Right.
That again, you bypass the people who are on your border, which is probably the countries that you should have been working with because they're your best trading partners.
Absolutely.
I was going to say, well, there was a lot of trade bills that Democrats were against.
Colombia Free Trade Agreement.
A lot of trade bills that the unions were vehemently opposing. And so, and here's the thing too: a lot of Republicans are in favor of legal immigration. They get painted as otherwise. And I get you, Bob. I think there's a lot of jobs in this country. We rely on immigrants. Both parties have to come together on this. But the fact that this administration has denied that there even is a problem makes it very difficult to seal this border. And why don't we take the 300 military advisors that we're sending over to Iraq and maybe put them on the border? I would be for that.
I wouldn't have a problem with that. But I just don't understand how you could possibly sit here and lay this all at the feet of Barack Obama when you've got an extraordinary situation happening in 3 countries in Central America. And you're right about Central America. Nobody's paid attention to it. They should have. After the oligarch, United States big corporations owned and bought and sold those countries.
He has incentivized this, Bob. He has incentivized this. And if you look at the immigration bill that the Republicans and Democrats crafted, I'll give you that, but it was led by Schumer and the Democrats, it rewards bad behavior. You can commit crimes and get legal status, something that 5 of us would never be.
May I get this in? Bob and I had a little back and forth yesterday about President Obama's claim that he's deported more than any other president and anyone at any given time. Here are the real deportation numbers. When you include the court-ordered returns plus removals that border agents can do, in the field, here's what it comes down to. President Clinton had 1.5 million per year. President Bush had 1.3 million per year. President Obama has a feeble 800,000 per year.
Not been allowed to go across the border.
But President Obama is doing that. He's stopping people at the border and counting them as court orders.
Here's another thought. They were in. Both of them were in for 8 years. He's only in 6.
Per year.
Per year. Per year.
Per year.
I don't buy that for a second.
Can I agree? Bob, you have to agree. We are pro-immigration. I love immigration. The more, the merrier. But it's just, all we want is an orderly process.
Our spouses wouldn't be here without
I'm married
without
an
legal
immigrant.
immigration.
I mean, you've got to have a process. People got to wait in line. You can't be a citizen without a border.
Yeah.
Well,
that's it.
We got to leave it there.